Whew. Waterproofs are on. Hello everyone, welcome to another video from Simon Outdoors. I am Simon, and today I'm just going to talk about a few tips that I have found really useful when I'm wild camping or hiking, and that I thought I might be useful for you. I've been hiking and wild camping for a few years now, and I do these videos every so often. So just to give some ideas of what to think about if you're a beginner perhaps going out on your first wild camping trip. Okay, these tips aren't in any order, and the first one I want to talk about is get a decent set of walking poles. So you can go to retailers like Decathlon who have loads of different types, and they really help for specifically multi-day hikes. So obviously you're not going to need these if you're just going out for a few hours, just for one overnight camp perhaps, but depending on the terrain and things, if you're doing multi-day hikes, for example 2 days, then a decent set of walking poles is a really good idea. I've got these ones. These are the Fizan Compact. Now you don't necessarily need something like this, but just something that's going to kind of hold your weight, and it can take up to 30% of the weight off your knees. And certainly when I've done multi-hikes in the past, for example the West Highland Way and the Coast to Coast, I massively relied on a decent set of walking poles to almost hold me up at sometimes when the trail got really tough. So it does take a lot of pressure off your knees, and it's just a really decent bit of equipment for you to use when you're out there. Okay, something else that you're going to hear spoken about a lot with wild camping is leave no trace. So this is where we want to be rocking up to areas. Keep it late if you can, pitch your tent up and leave nice and early in the morning, and don't leave any rubbish behind. And that way it's then tolerated by the landowner. I'm speaking from the UK, and specifically in England, wild camping is illegal, but it is tolerated in some areas. So with leave no trace in mind, don't leave any rubbish behind. Wild camping is permitted in Scotland, and in some areas you need permits between specific hours, and in Dartmoor, but there are rules around that. So my suggestion would be that you check the area that you're going to for the rules specifically for that area, and where you can, try and get landowners' permission. That's not going to be always possible, so if that isn't possible, then do leave no trace. Keep the area nice and tidy. Take everything with you once you go, and as I said, try and get there late and leave early in the morning. Okay, so next one then is buy yourself a decent tent. So there's so much gear out there, so you want to be looking at something that isn't cheaply made and doesn't have kind of cheap poles. Ideally aluminium poles would be perfect, and again this comes under the whole bracket, but you don't need to buy really expensive gear. This should be an affordable hobby for everyone, where you can just get out and enjoy the great outdoors. So the first tent I ever bought was a Berghaus Peak 3.1, so it was reasonable quality. They don't make this tent anymore, I believe, but they make the OEX Bobcat, which is a very similar design. Fantastic little tent, absolutely loved it, and at the time I think it cost me something like £60, so it wasn't super expensive. And it's just something that allows you to get out there, and definitely at the moment with being in the UK with the COVID rules, etc., a lot of people are holidaying in the UK, so a lot of this camping stuff does have really high resale value. So if it is a hobby that you decide to get into and something that you really enjoy, things like your tent and all that kind of stuff, you can sell on. If you want to improve your equipment, you can buy stuff that way, and that's certainly how I finance a lot of the equipment. So I would say get a decent tent to start with. You don't have to spend tons of money on the gear that you're buying. Also, definitely consider getting a sleeping pad and a sleeping mat, and also a decent sleeping bag, because all of these things are going to help you have a more enjoyable experience. Again, you don't have to spend a ton of money to start with. You can sell things on, and you can buy new things as you enjoy the hobby, and if you do decide it's something you want to do, you can kind of finance things that way. But I would say all of these things do improve your experience. Now, I started with a very cheap sleeping pad and had an awful night's sleep, but I loved the trip that much on my first ever trip that I ended up getting a more expensive pad from Thermarest, and that massively improved my sleep quality, and I was really surprised at how I was able to get actually quite a good night's sleep outside. And without that, I think I probably may have not have stayed in the hobby as long if I didn't make that discovery. So see if you enjoy it to start with, and then you can progress after that. Okay, next thing I can think of then is don't take too much stuff with you, and you'll hear a lot of hikers talking about this and wild campers, but it's so true. I think the first time I went wild camping, and before I did it, I did loads of research, and I was like, oh, I gotta buy loads of things. So I bought a torch, and I bought a headlamp, and Actually, I think I just bought a torch to start with, and then I was like, well, I don't need both of these things. Why do I need a torch with me? Like, that's, if you have a headlamp, that's fine. I also have a useful light just to sit above on my tent, which I sometimes take with me, but to be honest, my headlamp's so good that I don't need that. Another thing I bought was like a thermos flask. Now, if you think of that, whenever I've made hot drinks, it's either been in the morning or in the evening when I'm in a tent, or I might just stop if I'm on a long hike and make a quick hot drink. I'm never going to make a drink and then put it in the flask and then carry it on the trip with me. So that's good for putting in cars and things perhaps, or, you know, perhaps each to their own. But for me personally, that was a nonsense item. So, and then you'll see people taking loads of layers and things, and, you know, like pairs of jeans and things. You don't need any of that kind of stuff. You need a tent, a sleeping pad, a sleeping mat, and a decent backpack, I would say. And then you're kind of good to go. Obviously, make sure you prepare right now. I've just come out in the woods today. It started raining. So I've got my North Face Quest jacket on. Actually, if you're interested, I've made a review video for that, so I'll put the card up above. And fantastic jacket. So it's always good to be prepared. You don't want to be going into the mountains or anywhere like that without decent waterproofs and decent clothes to keep you warm. For example, a down jacket, and layers are a good idea, but you don't need a ton of things, you know, like I mentioned, the kind of things that I took before, which really weren't needed at all. Although, having said all of that, I do like to take luxury items with me, and this is one of them. It's basically a wash bag that I use to keep all of my toothbrush, toothpaste, toilet tissue. It's also got a hook which you can kind of hook up, which is really useful. So this is super lightweight. It doesn't weigh anything, and it's really easy to carry with me. Also, like my walking poles as well. Okay, next thing then is I would invest in a decent set of walking boots if you decide this is something that you want to do as a hobby. And when I first got into wild camping, I bought a cheap set of walking boots, and they were absolutely fine, but they were never going to be something that was good for multi-day hikes. And as I mentioned, I've done the Coast to Coast and West Highland Way, and those kind of trips take a number of days to do, so you're going to need something decent for those. The reason for that is you're going to want to keep your feet dry, so you can get something like Gore-Tex. I have the Salomon X Ultra shoes, which are really good, really comfortable. Actually need replacing because I've just found a hole in them, but no, they're fantastic, and they've been really good for me on kind of the longer hikes I've done. They're super comfortable, completely waterproof, fit really nicely, and I've managed to avoid getting blisters in them even the first time I used them. I think on the 9-day walk that I did, I got one blister maybe towards the end. So with a decent set of walking boots, they're going to help you kind of avoid that kind of thing, and obviously try and wear them in a little bit to avoid those blisters. But I think that's a little bit less relevant these days with them being so comfortable in the first instance. Okay, another tip then, and finally, this is going to be the last one, but I just say, just make sure you stay hydrated. So take plenty of water with you. If you're going on a kind of a overnighter, I always take a 2-litre bottle, put it in the side section of my Osprey, and that's really handy for me. I've never been a massive fan of filtering water, even on the West Highland Way. I didn't do it because there were always enough spots to fill up my water bottle. But you can get some really good water filters. I have one of them, the Sawyer Mini, and I definitely use that on the Coast to Coast, and that was really useful for filtering water to stay hydrated. And a lot of people I see now are using the Katadyn B3, which is also another really good water filter. So stay hydrated, take plenty of water with you. You don't want to be running out of water. And that would be my last tip. It's time to get out of here. Right everyone, it's just a short video this week really. I'm going up into Wales next week, so I will be testing out one of the new tents, which I'm really looking forward to. It's going to be wicked, a couple of days away, so stay tuned for that. If you do enjoy this video, do hit the like button and consider subscribing if you're new. It would really help me out. Otherwise, I will see you guys on the next video. Take care everyone. Bye.